Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for this special midweek edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We are highly privileged and honored to have with us Dr. Musa Rabiu, who is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants. I will read his profile shortly, but at the moment, is the Executive Secretary, People Expertise and Excellence Foundation, PEEF. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we will be speaking to us on a topic titled Critical Issues in Professional Global Connections and Making Local Impact. I'll move on to read his profile, but do me one favor, quickly reach out on your various groups, share the invitation to this meeting, invite your colleagues. Every HR professional must be on this call. All right, you'll thank me later. All right, Dr. Rabiu is a seasoned professional and serves as the Executive Secretary of the People Expertise and Excellence Foundation, which is a non-profit organization based in Abuja. He is dedicated to enhancing human capital impact on governance in Nigeria and Africa. Previously, Dr. Rabiu was the Group Chief Human Resource Officer at Dangote PLC, Dangote Cement. He managed the HR function with well over 20,000 employees across Africa. With prior experience as a group HR consultant at the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Dr. Rabiu provided strategic HR guidance to establish an integrated competence and performance management framework, focusing on efficiency and effectiveness. He has also contributed academically. He served as a senior lecturer at State University, Abuja. Additionally, Dr. Rabiu has entrepreneurial experience as the managing consultant of Salsabil Consulting Limited, and he consulted for Federal Ministry of Work. He possesses professional body regulatory experience. This is interesting, as he is the former registrar, chief executive officer of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria. He practiced as a human resource manager with Shell in Nigeria and Shell in Netherlands, focused on competency management framework, leadership development, diversity, equity, and inclusion. His academic background includes a Bachelor of Science and a Master's of Science in Economics from the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University, Zaire. And he has a Doctor of Business Administration, DBA, from Leeds Beckett University, United Kingdom. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Rabiu's dedication to professional development is evident through his participation in various training programs and active involvement in professional outreach. For example, he is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria. He is a life member, Nigerian Economic Society, a fellow Institute of Management Consultants, and fellow MCDI and Community Service Initiatives. He is a recipient and Mentor of the Year Award from the Gartnergy UK. Dr. Rabiu's competencies include, but not limited, talent acquisition and development, performance management, leadership development, succession planning, and execution. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited tonight to present to us the protege himself, Dr. Musa Rabiu. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, my brother and professional colleague, Oluyemi Adeosun. It's a pleasure, distinguished guests, tonight to engage you. The topic is quite an exciting one. Critical issues in professional global connection and making local impact. Living in a global world, we certainly cannot but think about how do we in Nigeria relate to the rest of the world, because we live now in a global village. So think about globalization and think about yourself, either as an individual or even, as a corporate entity, how you relate to the global, dynamics ongoing. So tonight, we'll be exploring this topic because we live in a very fast work environment, and organizations have to establish global connections and ensure that there is a local impact. Otherwise, where is the value addition in having that global connection? So we'll be looking at what do we mean by globalization within a professional context? What are the challenges in globalization? And, local impact, how do we make the local impact significant? What strategies should we be looking at? Statistically, it has been shown that 70% of consumers prefer to buy from companies that demonstrate commitment to local communities. So if you have a global entity and there is a local impact connection, there is more attraction for the buyers of your service or product to get into your business. So we as HR professionals, and if we take our institute CIPN, how do we make that a reality? So we also look at balancing the strategies and ensuring that there is real impact in the local environment that we live in. Finally, we'll be taking a look at some case examples. Towards the end of this presentation, CIPD, Chartered Institute of Personnel Development of the UK, and SHAM, Society of Human Resource Management. So what do they do, and how do we move from talking about global connections to making local impact from these two case examples that I've given? So this is the menu. This is the agenda for tonight. So we'll take a look at understanding the concepts, globalization, local impact. What are the key critical issues? There are quite many. We'll just go through them quickly because of time constraint. Bridging the local and global connections. How do we do that? Strategies for making local impact. Designing partnership and systemic change. What is the framework for doing that? And finally, and very importantly, we look at case example organizations, CIPD and SHAM, and then we'll conclude this discussion tonight. So understanding globalization and local impact, let's start with the definition. So globalization refers to increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of culture, societies, and business worldwide. So where there is connection, there's certainly across continental, regional, geographic space, then we're now beginning to move from local to global. All right, so you move from local to regional, and then of course to global. So, but there must be interconnectedness, issues of integration of market technologies, issues around even professional playing critical role in managing this diversity, because when you talk of global, you're also talking about the global workforce with different nationality backgrounds, different discipline background, and so many diversities that are involved in the global workforce. We'll take a look at some of this as we go on, but that's the common understanding of what globalization means. I've got a few of these images in my presentation. So this is the first one, and I'm using this to really allow the guests, the audience, to reflect on the text, because the picture, I think you remember this more. So globalization has all these dimensions that are shown here, from top going right, integration of economies, equality, inequity, communications, you go around. So all of these have their global dimensions. Of course, they also have the local impact. Now, definition of local impacts. If you read it, it refers to the tangible benefits that arise to the local, communities. So if there's a global intervention, policy, practice, how does that really have tangible benefit, effects and benefits within the local community? So if CIPN, for example, is going to use a global standard in its practice, say licensing practice. How does that impact the quality of human resource management practice in Nigeria, for example? So how do you internalize the global standard so that you can derive some value from it? Okay, and then the positive influence that comes from this sort of global intervention in the local environment. Again, take a look at this image from local to global connections. What do you see here? All right, emergence of local connections, expansion through networks, rise of international trade. We take a look at that. An example is the World Trade Organization. Okay, so everything is connected to everything else. Remember, definition is interconnectedness. All right, that gives you a definition of what globalization means in terms of what you do and how what others do affects you. Now, getting deeper into understanding this concept of globalization and local impact, what are the implications of globalization? So some of them are listed here. Diverse workforce management. I have been privileged to have worked at Shell, and I spent 4 years in the Netherlands. I was in The Hague, the central offices of Shell. And there, it was a global, office. So there was a global diverse workforce. In fact, I was a minority, from Africa, in the team there. Mostly were Caucasians. And we work on the concept of global star pool, meaning Shell being a global company with companies all over the world, how do we manage the workforce such that the different nationalities will still be relevant, in the way we attract, in the way we deploy staff? So a diverse workforce management is an area where HR professionals need to have the skill to be able to play globally and make local impact. Talent acquisition, mobility is the same. I experienced that when I worked in the Hague. Cross-cultural communication, how do you deal with that? Because these are all implications of globalization. More factors to look at: legal regulatory compliance. In every country, you must be able to comply with the legal regulatory compliance requirements in that environment. Again, I'll give an example with my experience working in the Netherlands. I was in the central office, so that was the global head office of Shell. And whatever we did there, we had to deploy around the world. And one of the projects I worked on was on early career development. And I was actually the lead in that project. And we prepared a kind of standard operating document that we call Young Professional Development Guidelines. Now, at the point of releasing this document across the world, we realized that in the US, we couldn't, by law, be allowed to use the word young because that would be seen as discriminatory. Yeah, so we were stuck with how do we deploy this document across the world when in the US it will not be acceptable. And in fact, Shell will be sued. There will be litigation against Shell. So we changed the word young to new. All right. So instead of young professional development guideline, it became new professional development guideline. So that's an example of if you are running a global business, do you bear in mind that there are local implications? And so you have to really comply with the legal requirements in those local, areas where you operate. Global extra strategy development. Again, there are implications there for managing people. Do you have a global strategy that does not have connection with the local implications? For example, Oman had Omanization program where the Omanis will gradually take over positions from foreigners. All right. So how does that fit into a global agenda to have the best staff, pool in a company like Shell, for example? Remote work, virtual teams, change management, organizational, culture. All right. So let's take a pause and look at this image. So what do you see? I'll allow you to look at it. It says global connection, local what? Local impact. Yeah. So think about this. And as we go through this presentation, reflect on it. What does it mean for you? So more on the critical issues in global connections. Complex operations is one major area to look at. It's a critical issue. If you have global professional services organizations such as CIPD, Chartered Institute of Personnel Development, which now is based in the UK, but actually has affiliates and partners all over the world. It's a global professional services organization. Face a lot of operational challenges due to their multidimensional and multi-office structure. So with this kind of complexity, operating globally has its own challenges and requires special solutions. Another critical issue is bureaucracy. If you have a global organization, for example, Shell, where I worked, it is still global. So the head office virtually will decide all the strategic decisions about the business. But with time, issues around operations were delegated to the regional or operating units across the world, in Nigeria, Oman, Malaysia, Houston, Canada, and so on. So that's the point, but then decision-making could be slowed, bureaucracy crops in. Leadership gaps. If you have a leadership, talent challenge, how do you close the gap? In a global setup, it requires a lot of efforts to deal with. Client retention could be an issue if you are slow in decision making and meeting the customer requirements. Poor talent retention could also be another challenge and a critical issue, especially if you're in a fast-moving sector of the economy, like telecoms or IT and so on, or financial services sector. Again, so let's take a pause and look at this picture. What do you see? How do you interpret this? This is supposed to be a global, image of the world we live in. So what do you see? Yeah. You think about it, you can see some bubbles around decision-making, PR on the far left top side, finance, web, sales. These are all business imperatives that when you operate globally, there are issues that you should be clear about. Like I just give you an example of a sector of the economy like telecoms. You can lose your customers, your clients, if your decision making is slow, if you are bureaucratic, if you are not connected with the needs of your clients, all right, and you operate globally. If you operate in a local environment, perhaps the challenge will not be as enormous as when you are global. Okay. All right. We move on with the critical issues. Global problems. Yes, indeed, there are global problems when you have global organizations. So what are these? And they are supposed to be looked at. They will vary from organization to organization. Local global connections, especially with the impact of interdisciplinary perspective coming in, could be a critical issue. All right. So if you take a particular discipline, say petroleum engineers, and I'm using the oil and gas sector now to illustrate this, the quality of the petroleum engineers you have in Nigeria, are they the same as in Canada, Malaysia, in Aberdeen, that is UK, or in the Netherlands, for example? Well, if you operate a global organization like Shell does, it has to make sure that the quality of the staff, whether they're engineers or not, is about the same. Because if they are going to deploy their staff across the world, then the standard of the personnel must be the same so that they can meet the expectation, job expectation, and deliver to meet the business requirements. Global capitalism is an issue. So that is the world we live in, free market economy. What are the implications, especially when you are dealing with the Bretton Woods institution, IMF, World Bank? or even World Trade Organizations, what are the implications from a capitalist philosophical point of view in order to make local impact as may be required. Social movements and resistance, global cities, those are additional points to look at. Then standardization versus localization of HR practices. This is germane to us because we are HR. When I get towards the end of this presentation, I will illustrate with CIPD and SHAM. So there are global standards and there are local standards. How do we ensure that we maintain local global standards, but we attune it to the local peculiarities, such that we align globally, but locally the standard delivers to meet the expectation of the clients. All right, so that's an issue, it's a critical issue. Cross-cultural competence and diversity management. When you are in a global organization, it's a key issue. I did say earlier on that when I was an HR, internal consultant in The Hague, I was a minority, just the only Black person in the African there, so dealing culturally with their issues, it took time. For example, in Nigeria or in Africa generally, when we go for lunch, it's like a bit heavier. You eat amala, tuwo, or whatever, but there it's just bread and cheese. So those are things that you then have to learn how to deal with. All right, but there are more things than just food. Their way of life. How do you interact socially and so on. Talent acquisition and global mobility. While I was in The Hague, and I'm giving this example because that was an opportunity I had to be physically on the world stage or global stage, I was involved in a lot of recruitment in The Hague, also in London. And for each recruitment, SHARE was so organized that they would train the recruiters or the interviewers on issues around diversity to be sensitive to different candidate needs, such that we're able to attract quality, talent, and then we're able to know that this quality talent will be deployable globally in any part of the world. So that's an issue to look at when you are dealing with globalization and trying to make local impact of the issue in question. Skills development, continuous learning, another area that I can talk about, but for time reasons, I'll keep going. Ethical, legal compliance, I did mention this earlier on. Legal and compliance regulation is the same as this one. Okay. Technology and digital transformation, all right? Now with AI coming in, it's even becoming more serious. Cybersecurity issues involved, so a very big one here. Global HR strategy and organizational development. Now, with global organizations, internally they could have their strategy at the global level and also calibrate it for local implementation in their operating regions. But for global service providing organizations like CIPD or SHAM in the US, this has to be generated with the mindset of allowing for local, local impact use. So this needs to be borne in mind, and I will show you some slides later on these two organizations. Knowledge sharing and collaboration is critical. Change management and cultural integration, again, critical, and it depends on the organization you are dealing with. Sustainability and corporate social responsibility. This is becoming more critical now, especially in view of the issue of climate change, all right, and the issue of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, the B is added now, and belongingness. So these are all issues around, globalization, and they are critical and they need to be addressed professionally. Understand local context is important. What is unique about the local environment? Is it the socioeconomy? Is it cultural? Is it environment? What is it? So for you to say this is the local context of this issue, global issue, you have to look at these dimensions. And then there's a need to also engage with local stakeholders. You cannot make the right local impact of a global, issue if you don't engage with local stakeholders, because they are the ones to give the correct feedback. Alignment with global goals. A very good example is the SDG goals of the United Nations. All right, they are global, goals, but when you come to the local environment again, how to deploy, how to ensure alignment is also critical. It's important to know that through this process, you're able to contribute to the global objective at the local level. Implementing sustainable practices, promoting inclusive development. Note the word here is promoting inclusive development. So if you don't include, it's difficult to have a development that carries everybody along. That's why the word inclusion is important. If you don't include, then only a few people are in, and you think that they represent everybody, whereas it is not. More critical issues that we should look at and be aware of in global connections. Adaptation of local needs. Okay, it's a repetition of what was said earlier on. Partnership with local institutions. It is important. If we are going to say partner with CIPD, they, of course, we know that we represent CIPD, CIPN represent the HR committee in Nigeria. So we are local as far as Nigeria is concerned, and they will come across as being global. But if we are going out to a state in Nigeria, CIPM, we need to look at which organizations are there that align with the objectives of CIPM, even though they may not be authorized to regulate practice. Localization of content and resources, very important. Inclusive pricing, affordability, engagement of local expert instructors, community outreach, and awareness campaigns. Now, another image. This one is about World Trade Organization and its impact on trade. So what you see here, okay, the text on the right hand, the picture on the right has text. So what do you see? Can you just reflect on what you are seeing? Sorry, I go back. So what is World Trade Organization? What's the impact on global trade? Are there criticism of the WTO? And what is the future of WTO? Because everything changes over time. And it needs to change as time changes. All right? Okay, let's look at the next slide. So on this slide, you can see global trade. There are, positives and there are not so positive. So the benefits are on the left-hand side. You can read them. And the negatives are on the right-hand side. Now, it is important to look at these benefits from global trade activities. If they are not properly, arranged to impact the local environment correctly, they will result in these negatives we are seeing. That's why it's important to ensure that your global connections have the right local impact. Otherwise, you may be actually creating negative net impact at the end of the day. Your globalization efforts are not really improving the local situation of the people. Now, finally, on critical issues, recognition and endorsement by local authorities. Yeah, so any globalization efforts that does not have local authorities endorsement will be in futility. That's why we have IMF trying to influence government on what to do, economic policy. It cannot force, but it can influence. And it's up to the government that is accountable to the people to either accede to the influence, accept, or reject. Continuous improvement and feedback mechanisms, very important. If you are going to have global standards on HR professionalism, we need to have in place a process to ensure that we get feedback from practitioners and we improve the standards and compliance. Technology-enabled learning and assessment. Yeah. We live in a very technology-driven world now, and we have virtual universities, in the cyberspace. So, learning management systems are also in place. So these are things that we should look at, but they are critical if they are not properly done. Promotion of ethical and responsible practices. So this is obvious. Now take a look at this image. What does it say? Think global, act local. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. In a global world, you have to think as a global villager, that where you live in is just part of a big village. So you have to think of the bigger village before you just act. So think global, act local. So when you think global, act local, then the global benefits that we talked about will have the right local impact. Now we move on to bridging local and global connections. There are a number of ways to deal with this issue conceptually. So a few points have been marshaled out here. Vertical connections. When you do this kind of bridging local global connections, it means you are operating at different levels, including community, local, national, international levels. All right. So these connections that have been dimensionalized will allow you to then ensure that the gap between the global and the local standard, for example, is systematically closed. Then next is inclusive approach. Meaning what? It means that, sorry, I go back. Yeah. Inclusive mindset. So this word inclusive has been coming on and on because it's very important. If you don't include people, you lose them, and then you don't get their productivity, their commitment. So inclusive mindset and open communication is another approach. When you do this, then you are easily likely to make the right local impact. If you come from the global stage to a local environment and say this is the way to do it, regardless of the local issues and challenges, you are not inclusive. But if you come with an open mind and say this is what we have as global standard, how do we accommodate local peculiarities? Then through that open communication you get feedback, and then the global practice can easily be localized with benefits to key stakeholders. And then diverse perspectives. This basically means having different approaches to understanding the issue so that you can bridge local and global connections easily. Okay. Next, strategic partnerships. For example, CIPM could partner with CIPD, which is an ongoing project now, to ensure that there is some closure between local standard or local practice and what is perceived as the global standard or practice. That is strategic partnership. Then global cooperation, this could come in the way of operating under an umbrella organization like the World Federation of People Management. This could be another way to bridge local and global connections. So another image for the audience to look at. So look at this, a bit busy. What do you see? You don't have to say anything to me, but what do you see? Think about the image, because every image I'm sharing has a message. You just have to look out for it. So if you look at this image, top left corner there, you can read mission, song, remix, arts. Think about that, right? What does that mean for you? Make a forest. What does it mean for you? What do you also see too? You see hands holding hands. What does that mean? Reaching out and connecting. All right. So globalization, when it is done properly, means interconnectedness. It means we need each other. We need to hold hands. Best practice wherever can be shared to improve the local environment anywhere. When I was in The Hague, I keep bringing this example because I traveled the world with that opportunity. I used to visit Oman. Petroleum Development Oman is an operating company there. And to work with the staff there, both foreign and local staff there on capability development. In fact, at a stage, we deploy a business leadership program, first in Oman, with participants from all over the world, not just Oman. So that's reaching out. You're taking a global practice, you go into a local environment to execute. We did the same with Nigeria, of course, with Malaysia, with Houston, and with Aberdeen in the UK. So reaching out means, really ensuring that the global connection adds value in the business environment. You can see at the bottom there, collaboration. You need collaboration. You don't need confrontation. Collaboration is better than confrontation. All right, so we move on to strategies for making local impact. So I will just speak to the key points here. So the first one is collaboration and partnership. And that flows smoothly from the last image. At the bottom, you saw collaboration. And you're also seeing the word partnership, which I explained earlier on, CIPD, CIPM. Leadership, yes. Leadership also is a strategy. If you have a strong leadership, focused leadership, you can use that in making local impact easy to achieve. Resource allocation, of course, without resources being adequately available, it will be a challenge. So you need to plan and deploy resources adequately. Continuous change, performance improvement, change management, these are all the same concepts. For you to succeed, your strategy must be to have an effective change management in place so that you keep tweaking and improving. In 2008 to 2010, when we had the reengineering effort at CIPM, it was a continuous tweaking until we got things right. But that is the spirit. Change management has to be effective. Enhance global social interaction is another area that is a strategic focus. Empower local member organizations. It's also key. So if you have a global organization with local membership, what exactly do you need to do? You empower community involvement. This has been a point has been made several times already. Engage in global network and partnerships. So we'll see some examples with the CIPD and SHAM. Empowering local leadership and capacity building. Yeah, so an effective strategy. Measuring and communicating impact. Yes, so if you want to measure the impact of local environment, how do you measure? What are your metrics? What are your KPIs? If you don't measure them, then are you sure you are actually making the right impact? Adapting to global trends and challenges. So you monitor what is going on globally and see how far off or how near off you are to the global standards. So now we are moving on to another aspect of this presentation, designing for partnership and systemic change. Yeah, so here a number of factors to look at. Identify key stakeholders, map the system, develop partnership, generate shared vision, co-create a theory of change. I won't go through them because of time. Again, think globally and act locally. Designing, again, these points are here that you can read when you get the slide. Again, think globally, act locally. But now I'm going to the case organization because I mentioned CIPD, SHAM at the beginning of my presentation. Now I want to focus on them. So if you take Charter Institute of Personnel and Development of the UK, this is how they are. They have global network of members in 150 countries, so that's quite a lot. So if you are comparing them with CIPM, we are yet to start. We have a long way to go. Localization of content and resources, they do this globally. So they have global content that they localize with their partner organizations. Partnership and collaborations, yeah, they collaborate with quite a lot of institutions, both in the private, academia and so on industry. all right? Advocacy for HR best practices. This is one of their, reputation. Global events and conferences. Yeah, so this is it. So if you think of CIPD, it's a global organization that you can look at in terms of having global focus, but also trying to make local impact in the regions of the world where they have partners. So let's look at CIPD in terms of MOUs, because they have MOUs with other organizations. Which are they? They are listed here: Australian Human Resources Institute. All right, I've highlighted the key phrases to watch out for. With this Australian Human Resources Institute, they recognize each other's qualification. So it's mutual recognition. It's not one-way traffic. All right. If you go to Singapore, what they have is not mutual recognition, but enhanced cooperation in HR and joint certification programs. All right, which is different from mutual recognition. Mutual recognition means you are on equal footing. So Malaysia Institute of Human Resource Management, again, recognize CIPD qualification. So it's one way, and promote HR professionalism. So be dependent on the CIPD, Malaysia dependent on CIPD. South Africa Board for People Practices, strengthen HR competency and professionalism. Again, seems like a one-way recognition of CIPD qualification. So this is definitely one way. Canadian Council of Human Resources Association, you can see it's mutual recognition. So which is an equal footing. All right. So if you talk of global local impact, this is like perfect. Recognize me, I recognize you. But it takes a lot of effort and rigor to agree to be on the same footing. So for CIPM, that is food for thought. Then the certificates, the CIB certificates that are recognized by which international organizations? So they are listed here: International Federation of Accountants, right? European Association for People Management, Asia Pacific Federation of Human Resource Management, African Human Resources Confederation, right? So this is where if you go to, you will see, yeah, CIPD certificate is fine. So for us in CIPM, we must get into all of this for us to be recognized, because some of our members, at least one, has told me he tried to apply to a global job outside Nigeria, and they couldn't find CIPM HRPL. They could find CIPD and so on. So we need to work on this so that we are not recognized here, but we are recognized globally by some of these organizations. So let's go to Society for Human Resource Management, SHAM, of the US. Again, they have global certification programs, all right? They have the SHAM Certified Practitioner or Professional, and then they have the Senior Certified Professional. Okay? They have local chapters, they have networks, they have research and thought leadership. Thought leadership is something that we should start doing immediately in CIPM. Advocacy for workplace excellence, technology and digital resources. Okay, so you can see their profile is high up there. So in terms of competency model, I just wanted to share these images. So SHAM is on the left-hand side. SHAM is Society for Human Resource Management, is equivalent of CIPM in the US. The CIPD is UK, is on the right-hand side. So the models are there, they are not the same, but they are supposed to add value. So it's global standard with local impact or value addition. Okay, so let's look at SHAM. Their MOU partners, Australia Human Resource Institute. So it's promote collaboration, but importantly, mutual recognition, just like with the CIPD. With Singapore Human Resource Institute, enhanced cooperation. There is no mutual recognition there. Then Canadian Council of Human Resources Association promotes mutual recognition certifications. So it's the same as with the CIPD, okay, equal footing. For Japan Human Resources Association, it's exchange of best practices. There's no explicit mutual recognition there, and there's no subordination as well, all right? Malaysian Institute of Human Resource Management promotes certification pathways. So here it's not mutual recognition, but It's like collaboration to improve local practice. All right, so more detail about the CIPD, model. They focus on core knowledge. They are listed there, core behaviors, and specialist knowledge. Okay. So let's look now at, for the SHAM certificates, which organizations recognize them? American National Standard Institute, ANSI, HR Certification Institute, United States Department of Veterans Affairs, International Public Management Association for Human Resources, International Federation of Training and Development Organization, IFTO. All right, so this is it. So CIPM, where are we? We need to find ourselves recognized by some, if not all, of these organizations. And it's not easy, it's a lot of hard work. So the bodies involved in global recognitions are listed here. International Federation of Human Resource Management, the World Federation of People Management Associations. I think there is an ongoing conference in Singapore right now as we speak, where the President and Chairman of Council will be presenting a paper, I understand. So this is one of the bodies recognizing certificates. So where are we? Our HRPL, is it recognized there by this organization? Global accreditation bodies, regional HR federations, okay? Then, global quality standards in HR certification, they are all listed here. I'm not going to go through them, but it's good to know that there are bodies that check the quality standards in HR certification. So for CIPM, which of these organizations have checked our own? We need to find out and get into it. Again, think global, act local. I think by now you agree with me on this. So procedure for global recognition of national HR certification, assessment is there, comparative analysis is there, global HR network, peer review is there, accreditation endorsement is there, all right? So these are all rigorous processes. Now, this image is about another HR model. It's called the T-shaped HR competency model. This is just for information that in a global setting, you're going to have different models, different pathways. What is key is what is the local impact of that global model or practice? Is it going to add value? Or is it going to be like the World Trade Organization, trade benefits and negatives? All right. Okay. So again, more on the recognition of national certificate, establish partnership alliances. So what we are trying to do with CIPD is a partnership. We can also explore the same with South Africa Board for People Practices, because they are with us in Africa. International recognition, mutual recognition agreement. Why not CIPM doing something in the West African sub-region with at least the Anglophone speaking countries? All right, feedback, continuous improvement. Okay, look at this image. What do you see? Strategic partnership. Can you do that alone by just engaging with the laptop? Employee advocate. Right, you can do that with your colleague, but what about the rest of the employees out there? Okay, all right, just think about what you are seeing and try to internalize. Then more on the procedure, alignment with World Federation of People Management Association standards. So this is an area we should work on because we're already attending the conference. So what about the standards? Are we aligned? Accreditation application, where are we? When I say we, I mean CIPM. So you can go through all of these and apply them to CIPM. Where are we? Okay, another image, human resources. What do you see? Does this show the complete value chain in human resource management? I don't think so. So think about what is missing or what is important to add. Then I would like to conclude. This is the final slide now. Oluyemi, I know I've overshot the time. So in conclusion, what we have done so far is to see in the fast-changing world, organizations have to think fast to establish global connections while concurrently fostering significant local impact. So as CIPM, so I'm using CIPM as an example now because we are HR people. I don't want to talk about Shell. I'm no longer a Shell. We should work fast on our image globally and continue to make local impact. It's important. There are many points here. I will just pick one or two to conclude. The last 2 points are important. We need to get closer to benchmark more with CIPD and SHAM, and also within Africa with South Africa Board for People Practices. That way we enhance our reputation, our recognition will also go far. On this note, I would like to stop now and then hand over to Oluyemi for his question and answer. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Short issues.
I can hear you well.
Thank you so much, sir, for your contribution and your presentation tonight. This has been very, very insightful. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question with respect to this subject matter, like please take. Then we'll move to another segment on today's. If you have any questions.
Okay, yeah, Oluyemi, I can see a question in the chat. Can I address it? It's not a question, it's a comment. It says CIPM is already a member of WFPMA and AFPM. CIPM and CIPD mutual recognition MOU has been signed and the process is currently being digitalized for activation before the end of the year. Discussion with SHAM is already ongoing. So this is information. My point in this presentation is not saying we don't have a foot in the door with either the World Federation or with CIPD. Is to go through what I've talked about. Where are we with regards to, is it mutual recognition or is it partnership to strengthen our professional practice? We need to be clear because I gave examples with Canada, between Canada and CIPD, US and Australia. It's different from, CIPD and Malaysia, all right? So that's the point I'm making. So where are we? Are we junior partners? Which is fine, because if that's what we are, so we have to start from there. So that is it. It's not about being a member or signing MOUs. Where are we and how do we get rigorous with getting the right global reputation that we should have? And it may not be one day. We may have a plan to say 3 to 5 years we want to be here. But certainly we have a target. Okay, the person has said is mutual recognition. So let's see the facts. Because, we are members, we should know what is going on. Let's get the details. Like some of the information I've shared here, I picked them from the internet. All right, so if there's something going on that is not confidential, bring it out. All right, Oluyemi, that's it. Any other questions?
Yes, any other questions? Or comments? Or clarifications? Okay, I think we can quickly proceed to the other segment. Thank you for this segment.
Okay. Okay.